Am I the a-hole for not allowing my sister's boyfriend to meet my son? My 26 female sister, 28 female, began dating a guy in November of 2021. I'm not sure exactly how they met, but I gave her a name at first that wasn't real. He eventually told her his real first name, Miles, and a couple weeks later gave her his real last name. I thought this was sketchy, but it's not my business and I figure I can just keep my distance. 2 weeks after they met, Thanksgiving rolls around and I'm hosting it at my house. She tells me she's bringing Miles to Thanksgiving. Doesn't ask, just tells me. I was like, I don't know. I really don't want the first time I meet this guy to be at my house. I bring up the name change thing, but she's upset with me anyways. My mom and dad take her side and I end up giving in and letting him come. He doesn't do anything too weird at Thanksgiving, but he has a lot of outlandish stories to share. I am nice enough to him anyways. I decide that since my family all seem to like him, that maybe I'm just not giving him a fair shot. I decide to go to lunch with the both of them a month or so later. Within 5 minutes, he says to me, "You know your grandpa has dementia, right?" I was shocked. My sister sat there nodding her head, and their evidence was my sister told him something and he forgot and asked a question about it the next day. Mind you, this man is 80 years old, but is in otherwise great shape. He then proceeds to ask me about our family business finances, how much we make each year, just inappropriate questions that are not his business. Last month, I tell my cousins, who also work at family business, the type of increase he was making, and they ban him from the office. He was coming in for hours in the middle of the day. I take my cousin's side, obviously. My dad tells me I need to mind my own freaking business, and my sister is furious with me and avoids me for a while. When we talk again, I basically tell her that I cannot trust her boyfriend and don't want to be around him. And I cite the comment about our grandpa in my explanation. She says to me, "Wow, you're really hung up on the dementia thing, aren't you?" Oh, did I mention I've been pregnant this whole time? Last week, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. I'm starting to allow close family to come by the house and see him. She texts me and says, "Me and Miles are coming to see baby." I tell her you can come, but he is most definitely not allowed in my house or anywhere near my son. She tells me, "Fine, I'm not coming to see him either." And I respond, "Okay, that's your choice." Now my parents are mad at me for shutting her out and not allowing her to see my son, even though I specifically stated she was welcome on her own. I thought I was in the right, but my parents are just making me feel crazy. Am I the a-hole for drawing this boundary? This endless conflict is starting to wear me down and I'm wondering if I should just give in to keep the peace. What do y'all think? Am I the a-hole for asking my in-laws to choose between me and a daughter they never had? I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 38 male, for 9 years, and I have a long history of conflict with a woman named Sally, who used to be my husband's best friend. The trouble started right after my husband and I started dating. He had a best friend, let's call her Sally, who he now realizes he had an inappropriate relationship with. I got hateful messages after we started dating about how I stole him from her and how toxic I was. The next conflict was a couple of years later. She separated from her husband and turned to my husband for comfort. In the end, I found out after we moved back to the area, she was lying to us about everything she said happened that ended her marriage, and I confronted her saying I didn't appreciate being lied to. Sally started telling people that I was in love with her ex-husband, and that is why I took his side with everything. That was the final straw for me. I went to mother-in-law and put down a boundary that I wanted no contact with Sally. Eventually, after about a year of minimal contact had passed, my mother-in-law started pressuring me to let things go and start attending family functions again when Sally was going to be there. I told my mother-in-law that I would be willing to attend events where Sally was likely to be, but I would not socialize with Sally. As soon as that happened, I can only assume my mother-in-law told Sally about the change because she started reaching out to my husband saying I miss our friendship that we used to have. Recently, I received an anonymous email saying some really harsh things. I assumed this was some random person trolling me, but we looked up the IP address and it came from the area Sally lives. The email referenced my private Facebook group, my first and middle name, and was from her area. She is the only person who I have ever had this kind of a hateful situation with, so I can only assume it was from her. I decided to have a conversation with my mother-in-law and father-in-law about going zero contact with Sally, not even accidental contact, and it went terribly. It ended up with us basically telling my in-laws that they needed to decide who they wanted at a family function and tell the other party that they could not come. My mother-in-law insisted again that she wished my husband could just be friends with Sally again even if I wanted to stay away from her, and that it would fix all the problems that has been happening. I reminded her again about all the things Sally had said to me, and my mother-in-law said she still didn't believe it was true, and kept saying Sally's like a daughter to us. She is family, and she would never do those things. My father-in-law refuses to even participate in these conversations. He just gets up and walks away because he refuses to hear a bad word about Sally. I am left wondering, am I the a-hole here? Am I the a-hole for not going by my dad's because he always sides with his girlfriend and her daughter? My parents split custody. It's pretty random. Some days I'm home and sometimes I'm by my dad. I'm 15 female. Dad started dating Jane a while ago. Maybe a year. She has a daughter, Mandy, that's 12 or 13, I think. Then they started spending a lot of time at my dad's. They have their own apartment, but they're still always by him. The first time they stayed over when I was there and somehow Mandy ended up in my bed. Her mom has this cot/bed thing she brought to my dad's for her. But somehow I woke up in the middle of the night and she was in my bed. I kicked her out. Then my dad and Jane said that was mean, and I have a fool anyway, so I should share. There's other stuff. I have a chair in my dad's living room I got as a gift. It's comfy, and when I move out, it'll go with me. Well, Mandy always wants to race for the chair. Even when I win the race, my dad makes me let her sit in it because they're guests. So I ended up sitting on the floor because my dad has a recliner, and Jane lays across the couch. So I stay in my room instead. My dad's tried getting me to come out there by them, but why would I have to sit on the floor like a dog? He keeps saying I'm being a difficult teenager, but that's not it though. One time my mom and I went and did some stuff before she dropped me off. She had bought me a blanket that had my favorite team's logo on it. I was excited to sleep with it. Stupid, I know. So she let me take it to my dad's. My dad made me share it with Mandy because it wasn't fair that I got something and Mandy didn't. It's not just the blanket it's happened with. It's anything that I have to share. But if Mandy has something I'd like to use, it tells me it's hers, and if she doesn't want to let me, she doesn't have to. One time Mandy was reading one of my books, and Jane and my dad started fighting. Jane wanted to leave, so Mandy wanted to take my book. But I said no, so she wouldn't leave. My dad yelled at me to just let her have it. They made up, so I got it back, but if they didn't, I would have lost one of my favorite books. My dad and I had plans to go ice fishing. Just him and I, something we've done since I was 7. Well, he brought Jane and Mandy along. All they did was complain. It's too cold. Fish are gross. This is boring. So we left early and he just said, sometimes you have to compromise. When I got home, I was mad. My mom was annoyed and called him and they argued. And he talked to me and repeated his compromising BS. I was supposed to go back to him a few days later, but I decided I didn't want to. I never even spent time with just him anymore anyway, so what's the point in going there? I told my mom, she said it was my choice. So I told him, and he said, I'm just used to being an only child and I can't be spoiled my whole life, and that I can't run away whenever there's a problem. Well, since then, his family's trying to get me to go back too. Am I the a-hole for not visiting my dad anymore?